volcano is erupting again this morning. The eruptions on the Big Island have been happening since late last year.
Well, one of the most active volcanoes in the world sits just a few hundred miles off the U.S. West Coast.
A sense of urgency has crept into the scientific community as geologists now warn that the Campi Flegrei caldera, lying quietly under the outskirts of Naples, could be on the verge of a dramatic event. For months, the signs of deep and mounting unrest have become impossible to ignore. Rising ground, increasing seismic swarms, gas emissions, and the silent pressure of magma accumulating beneath the surface. These signals have prompted authorities to raise the alert level, the so-called red alert in some media reports, sparking concern across Italy and the wider world about what an eruption might mean for this populous and historically significant region. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The caldera sits in a complex geological setting. This broad, roughly 12 x 15 kilometers depression is the result of massive eruptions in the distant past, with one of the most cataclysmic, the Campanian ignimbrite eruption roughly 39,000 years ago, having remade large parts of the region. The last substantial eruption visible in historic times was in AD 1538, when Monte Nuovo rose in just a few days. Since then, however, this vast volcanic system has remained largely dormant, yet not entirely silent. In recent years, the signs of reawakening have grown more apparent. The phenomenon of bradyseism, slow uplift or subsidence of the ground due to volcanic and hydrothermal changes below, has been a hallmark here for centuries. At the same time, seismic activity has shown increases in both rate and intensity, with earthquake swarms clustering beneath the caldera and many events occurring at shallow depths. The ground has been rising steadily in some sectors by centimeters per year, showing that something is actively pushing from below. Those developments have pushed monitoring agencies to shift from long-term vigilance to a posture of heightened concern. The very term red alert conjures images of imminent eruption, mass evacuation, and dramatic disruption. While this may still be a worst-case scenario rather than a certainty, the implications of a volcanic event at Campi Flegrei are so large that the mere possibility commands full attention. If an eruption were to occur, the implications are manifold. The densely populated region around Naples lies right within the caldera and its surroundings. The red zone mapping by Italian Civil Protection classifies areas of maximum hazard, areas that could require full evacuation within 72 hours once an eruption becomes likely. The risk is not simply local. Ash clouds, pyroclastic flows, and volcanic gases could affect far-flung communities, infrastructure, transport networks, and climate effects on a broader scale. The kind of eruption matters. It could range from a more modest steam-driven explosion, phreatic or phreatomagmatic, to a far more violent Plinian event reminiscent of the caldera's ancient past. Even a moderate eruption in this region would be extraordinarily disruptive. Models show that ejecta and pyroclastic currents from moderate-size events VEI-4, 5 could extend beyond the caldera rim and impinge on the outskirts of Naples and other inhabited zones. Given the dense infrastructure, historic urban fabric, and large population, the scope for damage and panic is high. Beyond the immediate eruption event, the consequences cascade. Air traffic could be grounded by ash, supply chains interrupted, power and water networks strained or destroyed. The tourism-heavy economy of Naples and surrounding Campania would face serious blows. Longer term, the rebuilding and recovery costs could run into many billions. The psychological stress on residents living in constant fear of the next big one also cannot be underestimated. One of the most troubling aspects is timing. Prediction of volcanic eruptions remains notoriously difficult. Researchers focusing on Campi Flegrei have been developing increasingly sophisticated models of how ground deformation relates to earthquake occurrence and how magma intrusion plays out. One recent study frames the earthquake occurrence as a cascading process driven by ground deformation, hinting at the caldera may be nearing a structural threshold. Scientists have mapped fault systems beneath the caldera, identifying that seismic energy is concentrating along certain planes, suggesting that the subsurface plumbing system may be gearing toward a rupture or release. In short, the volcano is not simply idling, it is actively evolving. At the same time, monitoring shows that the uplift of the ground, the bulging of the Earth's surface, is persistent and increasing in some sectors. This inflation signals magma accumulation, pressurization of hydrothermal fluids, or the injection of gas-rich magma at depth. Any of these could destabilize the crust above. The precise depth and composition of the magma, the geometry of the plumbing, and the stress state of the surrounding rocks all contribute to whether the system will move quietly into a new equilibrium or violently into an eruption. Given these mounting pressures, authorities face a critical challenge: when to trigger large-scale response measures. Evacuation of 500,000 people is no small logistical feat. The red zone around Campi Flegrei already encompasses communes such as Pozzuoli, Bacoli, Monte di Procida, and part of Naples. For decision-makers, the choice is between acting early, risking false alarms, unnecessary disruption and economic cost, and acting late, risking catastrophic consequences if eruption strikes without enough preparation. The region's vulnerability is heightened by its historic legacy. In 1983 to 84, a significant uplift phase and seismic unrest under Campi Flegrei produced cracks, ground deformation, and community anxiety. Although that episode did not culminate in major eruption, it served as a dress rehearsal of sorts. The local population, infrastructure, and civil protection mechanisms were tested, and though improvements have been made, the stakes remain higher today due to greater urban development and population density. What makes Campi Flegrei particularly exceptional is its classification as one of the most hazardous volcanic systems on Earth. Its eruptive history, the size of the caldera, and its location beneath a populous region combine to make it a volcano of global concern. Researchers caution that the window for safe intervention may be narrowing. Some studies suggest that the caldera is approaching a breaking point in the structural sense. The social implications are also heavy. Communities will need access to accurate, timely information. Panic and rumor can spread quickly in such circumstances, and evacuation logistics must account for vulnerable populations, transport bottlenecks, medical facilities, and continuity of services. Schools, hospitals, and critical infrastructure in Naples and nearby must be integrated into contingency plans. The costs of failing to prepare, or of preparing too late, are enormous. From an economic perspective, there are ripple effects. Business disruption, tourism decline, insurance losses, reconstruction, relocation of peoples, and possible abandonment of property all weigh heavily. One study estimated that an immediate evacuation of the Campi Flegrei red zone could cost Italy tens of billions of euros and impact GDP. Infrastructure such as roads, rail links, ports, especially in the Bay of Naples, are vulnerable to ashfall, pyroclastic flows, or lahars triggered by eruption or collapse. These are strategic assets not just for the region but for Italy as a whole. Another consequence lies in the environmental realm. An eruption of this magnitude could inject ash and gas into the stratosphere, influencing climate, causing acid rain, and affecting agriculture. Although such large-scale planetary impacts are less likely in moderate eruptions, the possibility cannot be dismissed. The volcanic history of Campi Flegrei includes super-eruption events that altered regional landscapes dramatically. While the current scenario may be smaller in scale, the principle remains. The environment will not remain unaffected. One must also reflect on the geological science itself. Each step of unrest at Campi Flegrei offers scientists a unique opportunity to observe one of Earth's most complex volcanoes in action. The data being collected on seismicity, deformation, gas emissions, and crustal stress are invaluable for improving predictive models, not only for Italy, but for volcanic systems globally. But scientific progress alone does not relieve the human community of risk. In practical terms, the readiness of civil protection is critical. Evacuation routes must be clearly defined, transport capacity sufficient, communication systems robust, public education ongoing. Residents living in the danger zone must be aware of their evacuation plan, understand when to leave and where to go. Coordination between municipal, regional, and national bodies is essential. Given the densely built urban context around Naples, any delay or confusion could cause chaos. What remains uncertain today is the exact timing, size, or style of a possible eruption. Scientists cannot yet say whether magma is making its way to the surface or whether the system might settle back into a lower state of activity. Indeed, some scenarios foresee the unrest ending without eruption, as has happened in past decades. But the magnitude of the hazard means that the prudent assumption must be that eruption is possible. and perhaps more likely than before, given the observed acceleration of unrest. Thus, for residents, governments, scientists, and businesses, the raising of a red alert at Campi Flegrei is more than a headline. It is a call to action. The confluence of dense population, historic volcanic power, and modern infrastructure make this a when not if kind of scenario in the longer term. The challenge is to avoid complacency while also managing alarm responsibly. A unique window of opportunity exists now, when the signs are clear but before the eruption has begun, to strengthen resilience, refine response planning, and ensure that if the caldera does awaken fully, the blow may be absorbed rather than shattered. In this moment, time is of the essence. Monitoring equipment continues to broadcast small but telling signals. Uplift gauges, seismic arrays, gas sensors, satellite deformation measurements. Each increment of ground rise, each tremor cluster, each gas anomaly adds to the picture. The human community must listen to those signals and act accordingly, because when the next event begins, it may move fast. The room for maneuver could shrink rapidly. The red alert is not just a warning, it is a recognition that the earth beneath Naples is stirring, and that preparation now may mean the difference between orderly response and tragic chaos. The tension surrounding Campi Flegrei continues to mount as the volcano's deep systems stir with signs that geologists interpret as the awakening of a sleeping giant. The warning signals that have intensified over recent months are now accompanied by a growing sense of urgency among local authorities and global volcanological institutions. The caldera's current state represents one of the most advanced examples of a volcanic system inching toward critical pressure, and every new tremor adds weight to the possibility that its stability is waning. Scientists are carefully balancing their warnings, aware that while the situation may not guarantee an eruption, it embodies every feature of a system straining under the forces of its own geology. The landscape above the Campi Flegrei caldera betrays little of the turmoil below. Streets bustle with life in the towns of Pozzuoli and Baccoli, and tourists still gaze out over the Bay of Naples. Yet beneath their feet, magma and gases circulate through fractures and reservoirs, altering pressures and chemical balances that have held for centuries. Instruments deployed across the caldera reveal a slow but persistent inflation of the crust, accompanied by micro-earthquakes that ripple through the area in swarms. Each quake represents a small crack or slip in the brittle rock above the magma system, and together they sketch an evolving portrait of tension. The pattern is uneven, indicating that pressure is not building symmetrically. Instead, it concentrates in zones where molten material may be forcing pathways upward. While volcanoes like Etna or Stromboli display their restlessness through frequent minor eruptions, Campi Flegrei's danger lies in its silence. The buildup to a caldera eruption can occur with deceptive calm. The surface changes so gradual that daily life continues almost undisturbed until thresholds are crossed. The scientific dilemma here is profound. At what point does unrest cross from being routine to being precursory? The answer is not binary, but exists along a spectrum that can shift quickly. A period of quiet may be followed by a sudden burst of seismicity, gas discharge, or deformation, signaling that magma has broken through to shallower levels. The difficulty lies in discerning whether these pulses indicate transient fluctuations or the irreversible start of ascent toward the surface. The Italian National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology (INGV) has intensified its surveillance, using high-resolution GPS, satellite interferometry, and continuous seismic recordings to monitor the area in real time. These networks allow scientists to model the subsurface in 3 dimensions, tracking how and where the ground bulges or sags. Data from these systems reveal a progressive inflation centered near the town of Pozzuoli, a clear indication that pressurization beneath the crust is continuing. At times, the uplift has reached tens of centimeters within months, a remarkable rate for such a massive area. Combined with changes in fumarole chemistry and the increased release of carbon dioxide and sulfur gases, these indicators point to volatile migration, which can destabilize rock and drive explosive eruptions. For the local population, the unfolding situation brings an uncomfortable mixture of familiarity and dread. Many residents remember the Brady seismic crisis of the early 1980s, when uplift and tremors forced tens of thousands to evacuate temporarily. That event left deep psychological scars, yet it also led to an eventual subsidence, lulling many into believing that Campi Flegrei would never truly awaken. The current pattern, however, differs in both scale and persistence. Whereas the previous crisis subsided after several years, the present deformation has endured for over a decade with signs of intensification. This long-term steady pressurization suggests that the underlying source may be magma accumulation rather than purely hydrothermal disturbance, a distinction with grave implications. If magma is indeed intruding and accumulating, the system's internal architecture becomes a decisive factor. Beneath Campi Flegrei lies a labyrinth of sills and dikes, horizontal and vertical intrusions through which magma can move. When pressure exceeds the strength of surrounding rock, these intrusions may propagate toward the surface, fracturing the crust and potentially initiating eruption. Laboratory simulations and computational models show that once the magma begins to fracture its way upward, the process can accelerate rapidly, providing little warning time. In extreme cases, final ascent could unfold over days or even hours. That prospect explains why geologists have been so emphatic in urging readiness now, while there is still time for organized preparation. The social dynamics of such preparation are complex. The Naples metropolitan region is home to more than 3 million people, many of whom live or work within the zones identified as high risk. Evacuation plans have been devised down to neighborhood level with designated routes and reception centers spread across southern Italy. Yet transforming plans into practice is another matter. Roads in and around the caldera are narrow, and traffic congestion, even under normal circumstances, can be severe. Coordinating a mass movement of 500,000 residents while maintaining order, communication, and safety would test any nation's emergency capacity. Civil protection agencies have conducted drills, but many experts caution that the scale of a real evacuation could overwhelm available resources. One pressing concern is the potential for cascading crises triggered by fear and misinformation. In an age where social media circulates rumors faster than official statements, even minor tremors can fuel panic. Geologists emphasize the need for clear, consistent messaging that conveys both the seriousness of the situation and the scientific uncertainty that accompanies it. The goal is to build trust, to ensure the public understands that warnings will not be exaggerated, but that hesitation could be fatal if conditions deteriorate. Striking that balance is as vital as the scientific monitoring itself. International scientific collaboration has also intensified as Campi Flegrei's condition captures global attention. Research teams from Europe, Japan, and the United States have contributed instruments and modeling expertise, recognizing that the caldera's behavior may serve as a template for understanding other large volcanic systems. For geophysicists, it presents an unparalleled living laboratory for studying how magma reservoirs evolve under pressure. For the world community, however, it is a stark reminder that humanity continues to live at the mercy of forces deep within the planet. The immense eruptions that shaped the caldera in prehistory released energy comparable to multiple nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously. Though the next event would likely be smaller, even a moderate eruption in such a populated area would carry global significance, both humanitarian and economic. Another dimension of concern lies in the regional geography and meteorology. The Bay of Naples, with its dense air traffic, shipping routes, and cultural landmarks, would face severe disruption even from a moderate ash plume. Prevailing winds could carry ash eastward over the Apennines or north toward Rome, affecting agriculture, water supplies, and visibility. Volcanic ash poses a major hazard to aircraft engines. Thus, nearby airports, including Naples Capodichino, could be forced to close for extended periods. Power plants and communication systems, if blanketed by ash, would require shutdowns to avoid mechanical damage. In the worst case, such disruptions could ripple through national infrastructure far beyond the eruption's immediate footprint. Environmental scientists are also evaluating the ecological stakes. Campi Flegrei's eruption could inject sulfur dioxide and other aerosols into the atmosphere, temporarily altering sunlight penetration and temperature patterns across southern Europe. Acidic fallout might damage forests and fisheries in the Tyrrhenian Sea, while heavy ash deposition could smother farmland in the Campanian Plain. Even if these impacts remain local, they would take years to remediate. The interplay between volcanic gases, climate, and ecosystem recovery is still being studied, but it is certain that such an eruption would leave enduring marks not only on the physical landscape, but also on Italy's natural heritage. Amid these dire possibilities, there remains a remarkable display of human ingenuity. Technological advancements now allow for constant remote sensing of the caldera through satellites that detect minute ground movements and gas compositions. Artificial intelligence algorithms are being developed to analyze seismic waveforms and identify early signs of magma migration. This convergence of science and computation provides humanity with tools that did not exist in previous crises. Yet technology alone cannot guarantee safety. It must be matched with political will, social cohesion, and public awareness. The warning systems, no matter how precise, must translate into coordinated human action when the time comes. The cultural weight of the region adds another layer to this unfolding drama. Naples and its surroundings are not merely population centers, but cradles of art, architecture, and ancient history. Archaeological treasures from the Roman era lie scattered across the caldera, from submerged ruins in Baiae to the remnants of old temples and amphitheaters. An eruption could threaten centuries of heritage, erasing irreplaceable links to antiquity. Local archaeologists and conservationists are working quietly to document and, where possible, safeguard artifacts that might fall within potential impact zones. The specter of losing such history deepens the tragedy that looms over this landscape of beauty and danger. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Campi Flegrei's eruption risk? Will it actually erupt soon? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.